Now, for 994 million Australian dollars, you can buy a Texas ranch the size of a small nation. Join me as I have a chat to the fella responsible for marketing it. Yeehaw!
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Australia's #1 marketing show. I am your host, resident cowboy, Timbo Reid. But you, so much more importantly, are a motivated business owner ready to crank out some great marketing. And that is exactly what we are about to do around here, about to do around these parts. Crook American accent, goodness me. Hey, today's show lovingly brought to you by the good folk at Net Registry who get your online marketing sorted. Got a new ad for them today. And 99 Designs, the world's largest graphic design marketplace where you're guaranteed to get a design you'll love. Now, big show today. Big in that it's all about a Texas ranch. I have a fireside chat with Texas real estate agent Bernard Uechtritz, who is charged with this amazing responsibility of selling a ranch with a price tag of 994 million Australian dollars. That's 725 million US dollars. He talks about how he got the prize listing in the first place and how he's gone about marketing it. Now, I'll let you into a little secret and then I'll explain a bit later. I was a bit disappointed with the interview, but I've come around. So stick with me. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. We have a quick check-in on the week that was. I've got an inspiring marketing quote to set you in the right direction with your social media, and I reveal a controversial guest that I've got on the show next week. Very, very controversial, very viral. More on that at the end of the show. As per usual, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at the Small Business Big Marketing HQ. So let's get stuck right in.
Do you need a speaker for your next conference? Recommend Timbo to your event organiser. Or better still, book him. Tim Reid, that's reid.com.au.
So, how's your week? Good? Better than last week? I hope so. That's why we're in business. Each week we improve. Yes, there are troughs, there are peaks and troughs. But we should always look to just being that little bit better each week. That's why you listen to the show. Hey, lots happening, as I said last week in the forum, the Small Business Big Marketing Forum. My old mate Lukey is back. He is a partner in that forum with me now, and we've got so many new sections. He has done a wonderful job of making all these new sections within the forum. So there is a section like to talk about blogging and websites and podcasting and video marketing and SEO, search engine optimization, social media. I'm just going through it now. Outsourcing, productivity tools. Then we've got a whole mindset section around goal setting, celebrating your wins, sharing your blockages. We have got a classroom full of marketing training and monthly webinars. Really, it has just gone to the next level, that forum. So I'm pretty excited about that. And the price is about to go up. So if you lock in about the next week, you will get it at $49 a month forever. But it is about to go up very shortly. If you're on the list, you will be emailed, notified about that, which is pretty imminent. Hey, working hard at improving my delegation skills. Got a real major focus at the moment on outsourcing, and in fact, working with a past guest of this show, David Warren of Sydney Tall Ships. I'm going to have him on the show in the next 2 or 3 weeks. He has got an outrageous update. He has basically saved himself about, don't quote me on this, but it's about $800,000 off his staffing bill, and his business is increased significantly, blah, 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 but I am determined to follow in his footsteps. I don't have an $800,000 staffing bill to start with, but I know I could be delegating more. So I am practicing that. I'm going to report back as I go because I want to focus on the things that I'm good at and don't do the things that I'm not good at. That's what I want you to do too. Been practicing Steve Sims' referral marketing idea too, sending loads of handwritten letters on stolen hotel stationery. Well, not stolen hotel stationery, but, like if you've listened to that episode a few weeks ago from Steve Sims, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, go back and listen to it, smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, and I'll put it in the show notes for this, which is episode 252. That's the week for me. I hope yours has been as good, hopefully better. Support for this show comes from Net Registry, a one-stop shop for getting your online marketing sorted. Verity Ma, their Chief Marketing Officer, recently told me this story of a very happy mechanic.
So one of my favourite stories of customers that I heard was a salesperson was talking to a mechanic, and he was talking about what sort of email he would like to have and what kind of hosting, whether he wants cloud or cPanel hosting. And the mechanic just said, look, I don't care, build my website, here's my phone number, make my phone ring and send me the bill. And that was the last we heard of him. He didn't provide us content. He didn't provide us any details about his business. We had his contact details. We wrote all the content and we just got his phone ringing and sent him the bill.
Net Registry, where happy mechanics go to grow their business online. Visit netregistry.com.au or give them a buzz on 1300 638 734. And tell them Timbo sent you.
Get on Timbo's mailing list over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.
Support for this show also comes from 99 Designs, where dozens of designers compete to deliver a fast, affordable design you'll love. I got talking to their head honcho, Patrick Llewellyn, who described the excitement small business owners feel when using the service.
A lot of our customers are starting something new, and it might be their first foray in small business, and getting your logo design, your brand identity started is kind of the first thing that you do that's really tangible, and it's something you can start to show off to your friends and say, hey, I've finally done it. 99 Designs, a place to show off to your friends. For a free $99 upgrade on your first design, visit 99designs.com/SBBM. Righto, let's get stuck into today's guest. Bernard Uechtritz is his name. He is a big-time Texas real estate agent with a very, very colourful career. Now, as I said at the top of the show, I was a bit disappointed with this interview, and I've been reflecting on it in the days since I've done it. Given this guy is selling a ranch for $725 million US, I guess I was expecting some marketing magic about how he got the listing and about how he's going about selling something with a big price tag. And I finished the interview annoyed that I didn't get that little nugget. But there is a nugget there, and I'm going to share my top 3 learnings with you after the interview. But I'd love to know what the nugget is that you get if you get one, because I'm still like, I wish there was just something I could have grabbed hold on that Bernard shared. You'll know what I mean. I know I'm sort of talking a little bit cryptically, but you'll know what I mean once you've had a listen to this fireside chat. Let me tell you about Bernard. As I said, he's actually a Melbourne guy. Not a Melbourne guy, an Australian guy who's now over in Texas. He's an accomplished polo player. He's sold homes of the rich and infamous in Beverly Hills and surrounding areas. He talks about that. He's now working for Texas realtor Briggs, Freeman, Sotheby's. That's a big name, isn't it? And is responsible for selling the Wagoner Ranch for that price tag I've previously said. Let me explain to you the Wagoner Ranch. Okay, this is some copy I took from an article online about the Wagoner Ranch, and it sums it up brilliantly. And let me just say where I got the article from. It's from Bloomberg Business, and the introduction to the selling of the ranch is this. The Wagoner Ranch, the largest ranch in the US within a single fence. Texas fixer-upperer with more than 1,000 oil wells, 6,800 head of cattle, 500 quarter horses, 30,000 acres of cropland, tombstones for legendary cowboys, long dead dogs, and a horse buried standing up. Favourite of Will Rogers and Teddy Roosevelt. Colourful history of drinking and divorce. 15-minute drive to ribeyes at the Rusty Spur in Vernon. Geez, they must be good. Love a good ribeye. Ideal for Saudi oil sheiks, billionaire hedge funders, and dot-commers who can tell a cow from a steer. Profitable, zero debt, property taxes only, $800,000 a year. Price, $994 million Australian. Gotta love it. So, now Bernard is an Australian by birth and he grew up on a plantation in Papua New Guinea. He now lives in Texas. So I started off by asking Bernard what took him to America in the first place.
I left Papua New Guinea in the late 80s, 88, 89, and I originally was travelling around the world and I was going to meet a mate of mine in Greece, and I got to America and didn't get past go. I flew into Kentucky, fell in love with it, fell in love with a girl there, fell in love with the horses there, started playing polo, and 25 years later, here I am, married, 4 kids, and have been really lucky.
Let's talk your real estate background. You've got an amazing history there. I understand that prior to moving to Texas, you spent some time in Beverly Hills selling some pretty interesting homes, including is it Jose and Kitty Menendez, who were murdered by their 2 sons. What was the selling pitch on that one?
Well, truthfully, I was more in the Malibu, Hidden Hills, Calabasas area, and Jose and Kitty Menendez back in the day, they had a compound in Calabasas, a fairly large compound. And they were had just moved into it when they were murdered by their sons, Eric and Lyle. It was a pretty, world famous case. And unfortunately, as bad as it was, it pales by some standards today. But it was pretty famous, and the property had been on the market for a long time, and had been with all the great salespeople and agencies of that time, Rodeo Drive Realty, and lots of high flyers like that, and it was stale, and it was stagnant, and it was stigmatised, obviously. And and I walked into the lawyer's office one day, and that was handling the case, and it took me 2 or 3 months to get him to see me. And I went in and I gave him a pitch, and the pitch was, I want a no holds barred way to sell the property, and I'm going to do this, and this, and if you have any problems with it, let me know now. And he stood up, and there was a whiteboard behind him, and he said, and he wrote on the board, just sell it, do what you got to do. And that was it. And I had it sold, I think, about 90 or 120 days later.
Okay, so there's 2 big questions there because I know myself and my listeners are always so interested in how do you get past the Dobermans. So how did you get that meeting with that lawyer, who I'm guessing's just a hard-to-get guy? And you mentioned the this, and this as the way you were going to sell that stigmatised property. What were those points?
Well, to get past the Dobermans, as you say, it was just constant calling, and there was no email in those days, so it was faxing, and sending packages and just sort of barraging the guy until he agreed to see me.
You weared him down.
Yeah, I wore him out, and the accent didn't hurt, and it was, a different approach, and that's always been a little bit of an advantage for me over here, probably more of an advantage than a disadvantage. Americans generally like Australians, and the door is more often open than it is closed because of your passport and your accent. And so I've been really fortunate in that regard. And then with regard to the, how I went about marketing it, look, it was a long time ago, but I know it went something like, I want to put out press releases that say, that the estate must be sold to fund the law case, that the lawyers want their money, et cetera, put the smell of a bargain in the air. And I want to be able to say that if I don't get an offer by X date, then I'm going to auction it. And auctioning it in this country has a different connotation than it does in Australia. Most properties in Australia are always, when they go on the market, they're up for auction. There's a bid date and everybody comes by. and generally speaking, and bids on the property. Over here, it's a lot different. You put the property on the market, you market it conventionally, you put it in the multiple listing service, all of those things. Auction is not a huge way of selling property over here, and usually, signals that the end is near and there's blood in the water.
But Bernie, you say the smell of a bargain kind of overcame the stigma of a house that people were murdered in. Is that really what happened? I mean, who ended up buying it, and did they just not care about what had happened previously?
The family that ended up buying it, I ultimately became great friends with, and
really,
in fact, partners for 25 years.
No.
Yeah, as luck would have it, and they're great people. But generally, when that sale started a career for me in stigmatised properties, or properties, as we say in the business over here, have hair on them, bankruptcies, litigation, divorce, estate division, probates, things like that. And that's really what I built my career on. That was kind of the mainstay of the core of my career. I mean, I've done a lot of other things. I've done, developing, but what you generally have to do with a property that is stigmatized for whatever reason, it may have been on the market for a long time at too high a price, or, whatever the reason is for it not selling or it not being sold, you have to re-level the playing field. You have to be 180 degrees different from anything that was tried before. You have to give it a fresh appeal and create some new angles. You have to campaign that property so that, from a marketing standpoint, so that you're opening up, new avenues, new ideas, and widening your centric circle of buying clients. It's
a common theme on this show the past few weeks, and a theme that I love, which is challenging the conventions of the category. The old saying, you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got.
Sure.
So, and there's such courage in flipping things 180 degrees, isn't there?
Well, I don't know about courage. There's certainly a lot of fear involved, and in my case, fear of failure. And that goes back to a guy that...
That's courage.
Well, yeah, I guess it is. You have to summon it, like the proverbial lion. But, fear of failure is a great motivator. When you are born and raised the way I was, and, I went to the 10th grade at the Southport School, and I did a year out at Longreach Ag College, and neither of which really prepared me for America and what I would eventually do. But so I have always come from a place where I haven't been highly educated. I've had to create my own path. And, if you've got the pressures of wife and kids and survival, and you've got to put food on the table, you figure it out pretty quick.
Love it. Bernie, I do want to get to Waggoner Ranch, but there is, I think I'm fascinated by this whole stigmatised thing, but also the fact that working in Malibu and Beverly Hills, or that part of LA, you must have worked with some very high maintenance clients, I'm guessing.
I did, and I have,
and you continue to.
And from time to time, I continue to. I work with a lot of celebrities, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, as we say over here. Lawyers, managers, talent people, that sort of thing, and a lot of stars. I've worked with, Lloyd Bridges and Beau Bridges and their families. Any number of them. Howie Mandel's happens to be a friend of mine, and also a past client.
So let's define high maintenance. To me, is that they make it hard for you. What does it mean to you, and how do you manage someone who is high maintenance?
Well, let me clear something up. None of those people that I mentioned are high maintenance.
Yeah, gotcha.
They're great people, great families. But I have worked with some high maintenance people.
Give us an example.
What makes them high maintenance? Well, Dr. Laura Schlesinger, high-flying radio personality, the Dr. Laura Show. Great lady, but, highly charged, very challenging, and a neighbour, and ultimately became a friend and a client. But, a must-do and a must-do-it-now kind of situation. And very often people that either have a lot of money or come into a lot of money quickly aren't always really that well-versed in real estate. and in the buying and selling and generally, transacting real estate. And so there's a lot of hand-holding, a lot of coaching. And in my early days, I would sell what most people in Australia would call mansions, whether it was in Hollywood or Beverly Hills or, on the beach in Malibu or in Calabasas, Hidden Hills, that sort of thing. And, they were generally a very high-maintenance clientele, lots of wealthy housewives and people like that, wanted to have the house that was just that much better than the next person.
Do you ever have to pull them aside and say, look, I'm going to get you, because at the end of the day, they want the best price. They want to sell their house, they want the best price. But their high maintenance is getting in the way of you doing that. Have you ever had to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, listen, I'm here to do the best thing by you, but boy, oh boy, are you making it hard, champ?
Well, in my younger days, I didn't have that many of those conversations, but I had some. And, I used to bring a lot of people into real estate and teach people, the art of selling and marketing and all that kind of thing. And I would tell people and take my own advice that the best revenge you can get on a bad client is to actually get the transaction done, whether they're a seller that doesn't want to sell or are making it hard, or whether they're a buyer that's, trying to grind a seller. The best way to stop taking them around in the car and putting up with them is to get them in a deal. And close the deal.
You're a gentleman. You'd never have those conversations. Get on with the business.
I've definitely been called other things, but...
Love it. Well, the accent, they'd excuse you for the accent. Oh, he's from down under. We'll excuse him. Hey, now listen, let's talk Wagoner. In your own words, I did give a little bit of a summary of what it is at the start of this interview before you came on air. But in your own words, let's assume that I've got a lazy kind of $994 million Australian in my pocket. Pitch me the Wagoner.
The Wagoner is absolutely, without question, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a buyer. It's a ranch of historical proportions, legendary in terms of the ranch itself, the political and social prominence of the families back in the late 1800s and the roaring early 1900s, the 20s and 30s. So much legend and lore attached to it. And it's the last of a dying breed. It's the last, or second last, if you will, in America, of the great name ranches. There's lots of big ranches around in America, or stations we call them in Australia, but this one is really special. Firstly, it's over 500,000 acres under one fence, contiguous land, and that's very hard to find. The King Ranch, people say, oh well, the King Ranch is bigger. Well, theoretically it is, but it's also in 5 stations, which are spread apart. It's kind of like the Kidman place, it's over several states, and it's certainly not in one block. So this is over 500,000 acres in one block under one fence. Extraordinary.
My greatest concern as a potential buyer, Mr. Uechtritz, is who's going to mow the lawns?
Well, thankfully there's only, a couple of 100 acres of lawn, so that's not too hard to cover in Texas. Everything's big here, mate.
Huge.
It's operated by 120 staff. There's 5 divisions to the ranch. There's the oil division. There's the cattle division. There's a horse division, farming division, and a lake division. And they're all sort of, vertically integrated and operated within the sort of the general banner of the ranch. But one of the most exciting things about this opportunity is, this family has owned it for 165 years. No part of it has ever been sold. They've been a very private family. There's been much said about fighting and things like that, but it's not all true. A lot of that's blown up by the media. Certainly they've for 20 years disagreed on various things about how to wind up the estate, how to liquidate it, whether one was going to buy the other out, and all those sorts of things. But when you have a big family, obviously there's lots of opinions, and it's wound its way through court for the last 22-something years, and with some good luck and good timing and hard work, I managed to be the guy that took the deal down. But
yeah, okay, whoa, says the cowboy. How did you get the listing?
Well, like I said, it was fortuitous, but it was also a lot of hard work. A lot of, as I like to say to people here, at times it was, espionage, sabotage, undercover work. All of those things that go into, a listing like this. It was a highly charged environment for a start. And had been so for quite some time.
I understand that you went to the micro detail, if that's the right phrase, to even sit at the back of the courtroom during the judgments when it was decided should it sell, should it not sell, who's going to be responsible. Like you were just there the whole time in the background.
Well, you have to be. I was sort of undercover for a year before anything became public, and like anything, you have to know what it is. You have to research what it is you're doing and figure out what the angles are. And I was fortunate enough to be asked by first one lawyer associated with the case and then the other to be involved. There was, hundreds of brokers over the years that had put up various schemes and programs and proposals. And but I think if I could say one thing that got me the deal probably more than anything else, was a combination of, tenacity, one, I think, and just passion for it. I'm very passionate about the ranch. I believe in what it is. I believe in what it was. I want to honour that. And I want to, I believe very much in what it can be in the future. And so for me, when I say to you that the Wagoner Ranch is the last of its kind and, I wax on prophetically about all its history and legend and lore, I really mean it. I've researched it. I probably know as much or more about that ranch as anybody today, and I immersed myself in it. But I think to be honest with you and to be transparent about it, it wasn't Sotheby's, the brand, that got this deal, and the receiver, who is my client, and the shareholders, who are sort of secondary clients, if you will probably tell you that. And I think the lawyers would tell you that as well. It was about, I think what got me the deal was that I cared enough to really go into all of the reasons why this ranch shouldn't be auctioned, because the fact of the matter was that the decision had been made by the receiver to auction it. And he had interviewed, no less than 7 international name brand companies. But this is a kind of a deal that requires, you to be fleet of foot, and it requires tenacity, and it requires people skills, and it's not a one-size-fits-all deal. And I spent a lot of time talking about why an auction was a last resort, not a first alternative to this mighty ranch, when it had never really been given a chance on the open market. And that was really sort of the core pitch. I think you say that passion doesn't play a lot in it. I think it does, because I think your passion flows through to all, firstly, the energy in the room whenever you're speaking to people. And if you're really knowledgeable about the product and you're knowledgeable about, you're talking to a room full of shareholders and family people and lawyers who have been immersed in this case for 22 years, and you can answer questions about the chronology and the development of the property and when houses and compounds were built and who by and things like that on the ranch, a lot of the answers that they probably wouldn't have known themselves, I think that comes through. And there has to be a believability. I mean, they've had lots of people pitching them, and I'm not saying that to say, hey, I'm this great one and only guy, but as a fact and a factor to a deal, I think that's very important.
I get the passion bit, Bernard, but we're talking about a property worth close to $1 billion Australian. Was there a hard business decision that you think secured you the listing? Did you drop your commission? Have a better marketing plan?
Well, there was almost 12 months of meetings and 2:00 in the morning meetings and off-location secret meetings with various factions and parts of the equation. But ultimately that all really came down to one day in court. And we were literally, Sam and I were negotiating this deal. I think the court hearing was at 1:30 in the afternoon. And I think we finally finished negotiating the deal at about 10:30 that morning. It went right down to the wire. I knew that I was sort of in, if you will, a few weeks before that, but there was still the crossing of the T's and the dotting of the I's, and certain clauses and things that had to be, and provisions that had to be implemented. And it was a big moment, not just for me and Sam, obviously, but it was a big moment for the families. I mean, the one thing about that decision, which both lawyers reminded me of after the court hearing, was, the decision to hire me and Sam was unanimous by all the shareholders, all the lawyers, and all the family members involved. And that was a first for, 25, 30 years. This is a family who were famous for not agreeing on things, and they agreed on it. And it was, it was a momentous occasion for them too, in many ways.
Now, okay, let's talk the marketing. You've got the listing. Who's inquiring?
It's in this country. It's the usual suspects that one would imagine that acquire land of such magnitude, and there's a few of those kinds of people. There's a thing called a top 100 landowners list in this country that's put out every year by one of the local magazines here, and so it's those types of people. There's people that make a career or a retirement career out of acquiring large tracts of land and cattle ranches or buffalo ranches, things like that. So they're what I would classify as the usual suspects. And then you have, entities that are both national and international, foreign and domestic, that are looking at it with, different ideas about how to run it and how to leverage the brand and, all those sorts of things. There's people who are in the oil business, obviously, the oil and gas business, in the energy business, and there's people who are in the cattle business. And I would say, cattle and oil and gas are probably, and land acquirers are the top ones. But look, we've taken this to the four corners of the world, which is what I promised when I started this. And we've had an incredible number of inquiries, almost 700 inquiries at this stage. And, there's a lot of dreamers in there, and certainly a fair share of scammers and promoters, but there's some real quality people, and we're down to a pool of about a dozen people at this stage. And they're, iconic name type people, and then there's some people that you've never heard of. When you get up into that kind of money, you'd be amazed at how much there is out there and what sources it comes from.
You say you took it to all four corners of the world. How do you actually do that? I imagine something like this doesn't require like some big fandangled marketing / advertising campaign. I mean, you quietly make phone calls. What do you do to get it out there?
It's a series of things. Firstly, with the Sotheby's International Realty Network, there's, I think it's in 60 countries. There's 16,000 agents around the world. There's 752 or 60 odd offices around the world. So it's firstly, it's pressing that button and getting out to all those franchises and Sotheby's owned locations worldwide. That's number one, and that's probably the biggest. Then it's my own network of private wealth management people, political people, celebrities, sports figures, landowners, people who know landowners, all of that sort of thing. A lot of lawyers.
So is it phone calls to these people, or is it a letter? Is it a...
It's a combination. I find the best way is, an email and a phone call. Depends on, who the target clientele is. Some might get a packet, some might get an invitation to get a packet. Some you may not call intentionally because you want it to be their idea and you want them to call you. So you'll pepper the area and lay the trap, and
Bernard, I'm looking at, you talk about the pack. I imagine the pack is a fairly impressive pack because the website page that I'm looking at now on the Sotheby's website, I mean, it's a page that it's quite funny really because it's a page you would expect to see for any other home that's for sale. It's got the address, it's got some photos of the ranch, and then it's got this long copy, and then a price, $725 million.
Yeah. Well, look, that's really, the Sotheby's website and both the Briggs Freeman one and the Sotheby's International one are really peripheral to the main core.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes me different is that I am different. And I'm not really a conventional guy. I don't have a website of my own. I'm a sort of a handshake guy. I'm a personal contact guy, and I do things a little bit differently. Sometimes I'll build an entire website for a particular property.
What's in the pack that you send?
Well, in the pack that I send is you have, lots of pre-qualification, financial pre-qualifications, broker pre-qualifications, confidentiality agreements that have to be sent back, and then it's a drip feed of information from there. Once people jump through the hoops, they can get into an electronic data room. They can physically come to the ranch, once I say they're okay, financially.
So once you do an inspection with a potential buyer, what is it? You do it in a chopper? Do you hop in a car for a week? What's that? What's an inspection look like?
We call them tours or showings, and it's a combination of, my truck or my ute or pickup. It's, a King Ranch truck, and or my partner has a Suburban, and we've got sort of a 3-4 hour highlights of the compounds kind of tour. Which is sort of a quick zip around during the day. You can get out in a chopper for an hour and a half or 2 hours early in the morning for the most part. And then if there's more sort of there's an 8-9 hour tour, and there's a 3-day program as well. So it just depends on sort of the interest level of the buyer and what it is they're looking at the ranch for.
Now, I understand you're looking down the barrel. I think I read somewhere of a commission of around $7.2 million. Correct? And what are you going to do when it settles?
Well, firstly, I never talk about commission, but what
I knew you'd say that.
whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
It'll be well earned, as I've said.
Yeah.
I'll just keep doing what I do, which is, more of this. I've got other things that I do. I'm a court-appointed receiver for another ranch that's non-related. I have other deals in the pipeline. I have things that I syndicate, and I'm looking at 1 or 2 really special deals internationally at the moment that I'm really willing and able to take on after I close the Wagoner, but right now the focus is on the Wagoner.
Now, Bernard, every guest that appears on the Small Business Big Marketing Show, something wonderful happens. They either get some media coverage or, asked to speak somewhere. I may well introduce you to the buyer of the Wagoner. Funnier things have happened. Any chance of a cut?
Mate, if you're licensed and it's legal, I'm happy to oblige.
Probably be legal. The licence thing's an issue. I'll head out today and get that sorted.
Yeah, print one up and I'm sure we can work something out.
Good on you, Bernard. Are you on Twitter so people can hit you up?
No, mate, I really don't have time for Twitter. I'm a social media kind of guy. Like I said, I'm a little bit different. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I mean, you're talking to a guy, when I started real estate in California, people didn't use computers. They didn't have laptops. We had a machine that looked like an old typewriter with a paper roll in it, which was our multiple listing service. You
sound like you miss the days of the fax.
Some days I do, yeah. When your voicemail fills up and your email's overflowing, sure.
Bernard, thanks so much for sharing the insights into certainly the most expensive product that I've ever spoken about on the show, and good luck with the sale.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Well, Bernard Uechtritz, hey, Texas realtor, selling a big parcel of land. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? What was your takeaway from that? I'm going to share my top 3 learnings brought to you by the very, very good folk at 99designs.com/SBBM. Go on, use that link. And the very, very good guys at Net Registry who get your online marketing sorted. My top 3. Number 1. In fact, I've got 4.
which kind of says, hey, that must have been a good interview. Number 1, wear down the Dobermans. We talk a lot about how do we get past the Dobermans to get to the decision makers. Bernard's idea is to wear them down. I don't mind that. Number 2 learning. Show more passion than your competitors. That's good. Yeah. Be more passionate. You've got to have purpose in your passion, as our old mate Keith Abraham says, but show more passion than everyone else vying for that piece of business. Definitely shows through. Number 3 learning. Be a handshake kind of guy. I think that's my big learning from it. That's kind of like in reflecting on that fireside chat with Bernard, it was like, yeah. Be a handshake kind of guy. Get out there, eyeball people, press the flesh, say g'day, you know? We live in a virtual world. Bernard doesn't. He doesn't apologise for being different. That's a good learning. Number 4, this is kind of a fun one. If you're an Aussie, start a business in America. They love our accents. Now, if you've got a learning, I'd love you to share it in the show notes. You know I feel lonely if the show notes go empty for an episode. So head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, look for episode 252 and tell me what you think. Eric Qualman once said, successful businesses using social media function more like entertainment companies, publishers, or party planners than as traditional advertisers.
Get on Timbo's mailing list over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.
Welcome to a small business marketing show.
That almost brings us to the end of the show. Not quite, nearly. Plenty of marketing gold coming up in the weeks. Now, as I said at the top of the show, I have got a very controversial episode coming up next week. I speak to a restaurant owner who's banned children under 7. Yeah, very controversial. He's copped a bit of a whooping from some sectors of the community, but he has been booked out ever since. So we're going to talk to him about that. I've got the founders of Mountain Goat Brewery joining us soon, plus a fellow who's trying to save the world one tree at a time. I'm also putting together an episode, this is a bit of fun, in which I contact the sales managers of unusual advertising mediums and get them to convince me that I need to use them. You and I need to use them. You know, like skywriting, back of toilet doors, all those wacky kind of places that people advertise. You think, really? Does that work? Well, soon you'll know. Hey, be sure to use Net Registry to get all your online marketing sorted over at netregistry.com.au. Why wouldn't you? And 99designs.com/SBBM to get a design you'll love within 7 days guaranteed. Anything designed, head over to 99 Designs. If you do use either of my sponsors with great success, I would love to know. I'd love to share your successes. Helps me, helps you. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, then join my inner circle over in the Small Business Big Marketing Forum at crankmymarketing.com. Book me to speak at your conference. Love that. timreid.com.au. Enough gratuitous self-promotion. It's time to get out of here. It's time to do some work. It's time to grow that beautiful, beautiful business that is yours. Until next week, I'm Timbo Reid. May your marketing be the best marketing. Yeehaw.